I'd always prided myself on my independence, so when I moved into my cozy downtown apartment in a quiet Midwestern town, I thought I'd finally found my sanctuary. It was a modest one-bedroom on the third floor of an old brick building with creaking floors and dim hallways. That Friday night, after hosting a small dinner party for a few friends, I was finally alone, at least, I believed so. I settled in with a cup of tea and a movie, determined to savor the solitude. But as the clock neared midnight, a subtle unease began to seep in, as if the silence itself were watching me. At first, it was just a flicker of movement at the edge of my vision, a shadow that vanished whenever I turned on the light. I attributed it to tired eyes and the natural quirks of an aging building. Then, I began to hear soft, measured footsteps echoing outside my closed door in the corridor. My heart pounded as I double-checked the locks, telling myself that maybe a neighbor was simply pacing or that the building was settling. Yet, the footsteps persisted, growing more deliberate with each passing minute. That night, I awoke from a restless sleep to a sound that made my blood run cold, a quiet rustling at my window. I crept to the window and peered out into the inky darkness, but all I saw was an endless void punctuated by a single, flickering street lamp. A chill crept over me as I realized I could swear I saw a pair of eyes reflecting in the glass for just a heartbeat before disappearing. Panic and paranoia mingled until I couldn't ignore the signs any longer. I decided I had to leave, even if only temporarily. Grabbing a flashlight and my phone, I tried to call a friend, but every ring only deepened the silence around me. With trembling hands, I forced the window open, despite the risk of shattering it, and scrambled onto the narrow fire escape. I managed to descend the metal stairs, each step echoing in the night, until I reached the street. There, under the sparse glow of a street lamp, I paused to catch my breath, injured by a jagged shard from the broken window and terrified beyond measure. I then looked back at the building, my eyes straining in the darkness, and saw something I'll never forget, a silhouette standing in my apartment window, motionless and unblinking, even though I was sure the lights had been off for hours. I never learned who or what had shared my space that night. The police never arrived on that desperate evening. I escaped on my own, battered and haunted by the inexplicable presence that followed me into the night. If you found this story as chilling as I did, please hit like, subscribe for more true horrors, and comment below your country. It motivates me. Stay safe out there. Sometimes, the silence holds secrets you never want to know. Story 2. After moving into my sleek new condo in downtown Atlanta, I was eager to enjoy the modern comforts and vibrant city life. For weeks, everything seemed perfectly ordinary, until one stormy night turned that routine into a nightmare. It was nearly midnight, and I was alone in my spacious living room, the rain battering the expansive windows. The ambience was soothing until a sudden, heavy thud jolted me from my concentration. I paused, my heart hammering, and realized the sound was coming from the hallway outside my door. With cautious trepidation, I moved toward the door and peered through the peephole. In the dim light, I saw a man in a drenched jacket standing on the landing. His face was obscured by a low-hanging hood, and his posture was unnervingly calm. My breath caught in my throat as he slowly stepped into my condo without waiting for an invitation. In that moment, the familiar comfort of my home turned hostile. I bolted back into the living room and scrambled for my phone, dialing 911 with hands that trembled uncontrollably. I could hear the intruder's heavy breathing as he advanced, each step deliberate, each sound amplified by the storm outside. I ducked behind a large sofa, my mind racing as I tried to decide whether to confront him or hide. Before I could choose, I heard the unmistakable sound of sirens approaching from outside. The intruder's pace faltered, and I heard muffled shouts echoing in the corridor as the police arrived. The door burst open, and uniformed officers stormed in. I could hear a brief struggle, a flurry of shouted commands and the sound of a man being subdued. They took him away in handcuffs, his presence abruptly ending with a flurry of activity. Yet, even as the immediate threat was neutralized, I discovered something that left my skin crawling. On the floor near my door lay a single scrap of paper, with my name scrawled in jagged handwriting in one word that sent shivers down my spine: remember. I later learned nothing more about the man. The police had little evidence to go on, only my frantic call and that inexplicable note. Even though the intruder was taken into custody that night, the mystery of his motives and the chilling message continue to haunt me. Every time I lock my door now, I can't help but wonder if his presence might one day return, leaving behind another cryptic warning that I'll never truly understand. Story 3. I had always loved the sanctuary of my quiet San Francisco apartment, a charming, sunlit space in an older building nestled in a bustling neighborhood. The routine was comforting, mornings with coffee by the window and evenings spent with a book. But one unassuming Saturday, as dusk fell and the city's noise softened to a distant murmur, a series of subtle disturbances began to erode my sense of security. It started with small anomalies: a favorite scarf mysteriously misplaced, a lamp slightly off kilter, and the persistent, inexplicable sound of a door clicking shut in a seemingly empty hallway. At first, I convinced myself it was simply the natural randomness of daily life in an old building. But then, one night, while I was immersed in a quiet dinner at home, I noticed something odd. The television's low static was interrupted by a rhythmic, almost mechanical click, a sound that seemed out of place and deliberately timed. I paused the show and listened, straining to decipher the source. For a moment, the click subsided, only to resume as if on cue, each pulse intensifying my unease. Curious and frightened, I set up a small camera in my living room to record these anomalies. Reviewing the footage later that night, I saw it. In the far corner of the room, barely visible in the low light, was the vague outline of a person, a figure standing motionless, watching me. I rewound the tape, convinced it was a trick of the light, but the image was persistent, each playback deepening the terror that had taken root in me. My sleep became a restless haze of anxiety, as every creak of the floor and rustle of the wind through the window made me jump. I increased my security measures, changing locks and installing extra lights, but nothing dispelled the gnawing feeling that I was being observed. Then, on a particularly cold night, I heard a slow, deliberate tapping at my front door. I froze, every sense alert, and peered through the peephole. For a split second, I saw a pair of eyes, unblinking and unnaturally still, before they vanished into the darkness. Panicked, I gathered a few essentials and fled through the back door, racing down the fire escape into the busy street below. I didn't stop running until I reached a distant intersection, where I finally allowed myself to collapse, shaking and breathless. I never reported the incident to the police. Part of me feared that if I did, the answer would only be insufficient evidence and the terror would persist unchecked. Instead, I left that apartment, never to return. Even now, whenever I sit alone in a quiet room or walk down a dimly lit hallway, I feel that unyielding gaze from the shadows. The memory of those silent eyes haunts me, leaving a lingering question: was I truly alone, or was I being watched by an observer who vanished just as mysteriously as he appeared? That unsettling possibility has forever altered the way I perceive solitude, and it's a fear that never truly fades.